All right, so I'm back here with Dr. Strangelove. We're going to pick up from where we left off last time, which was how some people got left behind, and unfortunately, that led them to uh, elect our current person who's going to be filling the office.
Well, howdy, Dr. Zani.
Dr. Strangelove, nice to meet you.
So, a lot has happened since we last spoke,
Exactly.
wouldn't you say? We were we were wondering what would happen, and it happened.
Right.
So, there's a lot to think about. There's how are we going to deal with this? Um, One thing I think that the current administration ought to do is to get as many federal judges confirmed as possible. Uh, that's really important. But looking forward, I have no idea how this is going to turn out, other than that's going to be bad, very bad for a lot of us. So there are a lot of aspects to this. And the sad thing about it, from my point of view, is that the people who are counting on Donald F. Trump as their savior, their their tribal cult leader to help deal with all of the trauma and disappointment and being abandoned and left out, like we talked about last time, those poor people are in for a very rude shock, I think, for the most part.
So, what are your concrete predictions in order? Like, what are the top three predictions that you think are going to happen in 4 years?
Oh, in 4 years? God, I'm having enough trouble figuring out what's going to happen in the next 4 weeks. Uh, there's lots of issues, right? There's what appears to be a wholesale onslaught on the institutions of government as we have known them for many years. Uh, DFT, Donald F. Trump, has brought in this zoo of freaks uh, for as cabinet nominations. And the common thing I see in most of them, not everyone, but most of them, is a desire to destroy as much government infrastructure as possible for the pure destruction of it. I haven't really heard uh, anything about what they hope to accomplish positively. It's all tear it all down. And I don't mind so much, like improving the efficiency of government and things like that. But if you're going to tear things down in a wholesale manner, it seems to me a good idea that you might want to have some things to put in place, construct rather than completely destruct. What do you think?
I mean, I think so. I was asking really, what do you think are the top three things? Like, what are the main three things that you think, or if you can think of anything off the top of your head that's like,
All right. There's going to be a wholesale onslaught on our system of government. I don't know how far it's going to go. I feel that there's going to be considerable resistance in the end because some of the things that are just being thrown around loosely without really having been thought about are just either not going to be feasible from a financial standpoint or are going to put so many people out of uh, their comfort zone or their ability to work or their ability to support their families that uh, some of these things are just not going to fly, but some of them will. And the long-term consequences of that, I'm not completely sure. I'm really worried about health services in the United States. That could be something that persists for a long time and does a lot of damage. So our healthcare system is one thing that really, really worries me.
But
Another thing,
on that
yes.
note, like, can't you think that, certain people like big pharma, the insurance companies, you know, when you move towards deregulating them, you know, and you move towards, I mean, to some degree, they have so much power as it is already in terms of lobbyist groups and in the government. I don't think they really care about who's really in the Oval Office.
Well, I think they do care in the sense that what they don't care about is the effect on us, the American people. They're predictably uh, invested in their profits, in their success as businesses. Uh, but I think they very much care who is in the Oval Office, uh, because they've got I wouldn't call it a sympathetic ear. I would call it more of a deaf ear in DFT. His nature is to promote business for the sake of promotion. So I think that these types of industries are actually going to benefit in the short term from the fact that DFT is in office. So, and of course, with uh, Robert F. Kennedy, whose middle initial really is F, but it could stand for the same thing, um, is a loony. Um, I don't know about fluoride in water, but vaccines, uh, make America healthy again. What are they going to do? Are they going to uh, make it impossible for children to get vaccinated against these childhood diseases? So, still in the health area, which I'm really concerned about, I worry a lot about the health of children going forward. An increase in infectious diseases because parents are not going to be getting their children vaccinated. Um, so that's all wrapped up in the healthcare issue. Another thing that really concerns me is the economy and the idea that you can use uh, tariffs to fix everything. There's so much wrong with that. And that could be a long lasting, persistent uh, avenue of damage for our economy. Uh, and along with tariffs, the uh, the hate, the racism that is going to at least lead to an attempt to have a mass deportation of, of migrants in our country. That's going to devastate lots of industries, especially agriculture, but many others than that.
But a lot of those industries won't let that happen
What do you mean they won't let it happen? They won't let the migrants be deported?
because it affects their bottom line.
It really does. But that's not seem to stop DFT uh, in the past. Uh, but it's not just that; it's the overall handling of the economy. I mean, DFT did this interview with Joe Rogan. This 3 hour long interview, and it's somewhere in the middle of it. He just floated the idea of getting rid of the income tax and replacing it with tariffs. Um, that would devastate the American economy. Will it happen? Will it be allowed to happen? I don't know, but it scares me that somebody wants to try.
I think the problem also is what happened. This is sort of the problem with the elites who are supposedly the ones who know everything, didn't really take the time to kind of make the explanation simple enough. They were too preoccupied. Now the elites have done it. Now they have left behind all these people who had no understanding, and now they really don't have any understanding, and they've elected your friend. And that's the problem. Is I think there's that other side of this, which is lots of people who didn't bother to spend the time to make it as understandable. Instead, made it out of the reach of some people. So I think that that's part of the problem too, is that we have a confluence of elitism that want to act as if they know everything, basically you've excluded a huge segment of society. Now that anyone and everyone can say, well, I watched Dr. Oz, so Dr. Oz said it to be true, so it must be true.
Yeah, we really screwed the pooch there, didn't we? For a long time, for decades. I was reading a report from Paul Krugman, the Nobel Prize winning economist, who in part is an opinion writer for the New York Times. And he was talking about that one of the divides in this country is, which we haven't really acknowledged or addressed, is education. The so-called elite, the progressive left-wing elite, well, they are in some sense. If you mean by elite that we have college degrees, there are far, far more people in this country without college degrees than there are with college degrees. Now, the reasons for that are many and long running, but it's more like the effects of that division that were made clear to me, or at least brought to my attention. Number one, and we're comparing college grads with high school grads, okay? High school grads don't live as long as college grads do. Their children don't go to schools that are as good as the children of college grads. Of course, they're uh, they're seriously affected by income inequality, and all those things are tied together. Um, and we really haven't admitted the depth of the problem, nor have we even thought about how what the consequences have been over all these years, and what we might do to mitigate them now, even if we could. This is one of the divides that leads to a population of aggrieved, traumatized, dissatisfied uh, voters. Another thing is that elites tend to come out and vote, okay, but then they disappear from the scene. They don't really stay engaged. So we've let everyone down that way as well. And now, it's sort of paradoxically, the incoming Republican leaders and those who support them and give them advice are actually looking at themselves as the new elites. So it's kind of paradoxical, and it's hard to understand what an elite even is anymore.
Well, first of all, I mean, where are we going with like race relations, religion relations, gender relations? Like, are we going to go back to the 50s? Is that really where we're headed? Are we going back to like abortion ban nationwide? I mean, what's going to happen with all those things? Honestly, directly, what do you feel is really the likelihood of these things?
The 50s weren't so bad in a sense, kind of in a weird way. We were just coming out of World War II. There was an unprecedented boom of prosperity. The technologies that had been developed for the war led to new, high paying jobs, at least for white people. And there was an unprecedented increase in the average wealth of the average person. Yes, a lot of people got left behind, but we also had roles. There were roles that we understood we could play. There were uh, tribal groups that we knew we belonged to. People belonged to community much more than they do today. But yeah, are we? I don't know if we're headed back to some of the battle things from the 50s. Look, if you look at the last 70 years, there is still racism in this country, but it's nowhere near as bad as it used to be. There is sexism in this country, but it's not as bad as it used to be. Unfortunately, these things tend to get better on timescales of decades. Uh, so it's easy to look around you and say, "Oh, crap, things are really bad now." Well, they are if you look around and compare them to things today, but things have improved. It's just that we're going backwards in a way. I just don't know how far we're going to go backwards and how long it will last, or whether some of this is self-correcting.
Yeah, I mean, don't you have to have some degree or some optimism? Don't you have to focus on more like what are the solutions? Like, if people have problems with DFT, then why aren't they speaking up? Why are they clamming up now? Like, shouldn't they be speaking even louder and being like more critical and more angry and more upset and pointing things out more and just saying, well, this is we told you so. We said it was going to happen. I mean, isn't that what you should be doing at this point? Is really just getting down to explaining it. You're like, well, this is how we got here. This is how we're going to get out of here. But if we don't take action, it's like most things. Is if you don't help clean up the mess, then it's not really going to get any better because like a lot of people say things where let's take like we just passed Thanksgiving, right? What do you do at the Thanksgiving dinner if someone says something overtly racist or overtly sexist? What's your response to that? Just to be complicit and be quiet about it?
I don't know. What do you do with an obnoxious uncle at the Thanksgiving dinner?
Well, that obnoxious uncle is now the president. Is going to be the president of the United States.
Yeah, one thing I think that is true for many of us is that we've been living in a deluded state for so long, thinking that the way we were doing things was going to produce results and that we were doing the right kinds of things. And I think we've been shown that we were completely wrong about many things. And I think that a lot of us are still in shock. And even if we were mobilized and motivated to get right down to work, being activists for in some way and working for, truth, justice, and the American way, we never really had the tools to accomplish anything much. And even if we could put some together, there's not much time left, before the four horsemen of the apocalypse:
Well,
Donald F. Trump, Robert F. Kennedy, and two more of his death
Biden,
riders
just
coming to
what happened.
power.
Yeah, just what happened in 2016. Biden refused to get out soon enough to give Kamala a chance to get some kind of message out there that was progressive, aligned enough with the progressives. And we should look at that too. Like, this is the first time a major party had a major African American, part Asian, female presidential candidate. It's the first in the history. So that right there says a lot. I mean, that's a definite positive, isn't it?
It's positive in an abstract sort of way. It's not positive at all in a practical way. She lost, uh, legitimately lost. Now, on the other hand, don't let anybody, let DFT and his cronies make you believe that they have a mandate. They did not win the popular vote. They they got elected by a plurality, something close to 50%, but it's no landslide, not even close. And uh, but we're hearing that it is, and this is just more of the propaganda echo chamber that exists around right-wing extremists.
So that's the part where I think we get lost is for every person that says it's all about them, it's that we're losing the idea that there's this ultra uber rich multi-billionaire. For anyone to have $250 billion, who's basically struggling with his own homosexuality and struggling with, all kinds of other conspiracy theories because his father was a complete prick. Like, I mean, and everyone drives these horrible cars that are all recalled, and you can't talk bad trash about them because you signed some agreement about them, and the batteries in them explode. I mean, like, I take a Rivian any day over that piece of garbage. But I think the part that really gets me troubled is now is the time as any. But people don't want to do that. People want to avoid conflict. They don't want to assert what they actually think they should be saying, and that's why Donald Trump, he's going to continue to grab them right by the P. He's going to grab the entire country by the P. That's his goal. We're going to let him do it because no one's going to speak up against that guy, nor is anyone going to speak up against the supporters of that guy.
You know, it's it's the shock factor right now, I think. Like, suppose suppose you go out of an evening and you think you're in good shape, you think you're able to carry on in some sort of reasonable, safe way, and suddenly you get the crap beat out of you by some unexpected, um, mob or a gang or something. I mean, you get the living crap beat out of you. What are you thinking uh, right afterwards? Well, if you're me, I'm not thinking that it's time to go to the gym and get pumped up and come back and find those those MFs. No, I'm traumatized. I'm bleeding. I might have to haul myself to the hospital or something. I might need to get patched up, and then, I'm going to need time to recover, and it's going to make me wonder how freely I can walk the streets again. It's traumatizing, and it's shocking. So I think that's some of what we're experiencing right now is people are just regrouping from, a beating and wondering what to do next.
Get active.
Well, yeah, but
Locally.
in a concrete way, what is something that a concerned person might do right now to get active and make a difference, something that would work?
When anything comes up that's related to the policies of DFT, to speak the fuck up.
That's true.
Yeah, don't just sit there and go, "Oh, I don't know what's the."
No, it's true, but how many of us have the stones to do that? Uh, how many of us are so self-confident in ourselves and have a command of the facts on the ground and understand policy enough to get something meaningful done? Yeah, you can always stand up to wrong and say that's wrong. Sure. And that is a good thing to do. But I don't think the majority of people are like that. So who gets this started, do you think? Who's the one? What are you going to do, Dr. Zani?
I'm doing it right now.
Oh, yeah, we are, aren't we?
Yeah, the point is not to really, it's really just to pay attention, to not be passive, you know, and if there's an opportunity to explain something to somebody, that's an opportunity. But that's never going to happen because people are going to protect their motherfuckers because they're afraid of conflict. And that's the whole problem. Nothing changes, it stays the way it is.
Let's see. Oh, another thing that worries you.
Like gerrymandering. People don't even understand what gerrymandering is. A
Well,
basic thing, yeah.
it's a
People don't
time-honored
even understand the formation of government. They don't even understand the branches of government, the local electoral races, voting in primaries versus, you know, people don't understand these things.
Well, that's funny because immigrants understand these things more than most of us do, and they're the ones that are going to be attacked and deported. People who actually know more about these things than we do. That I find that ironic.
I think it's time for the uprising of the matriarchy. That's my opinion. I think this motherfucking patriarchy needs to be put in their fucking asshole place. When Sinead O'Connor ripped a picture of the Pope on Saturday Night Live and was like, this is bullshit. Okay? And the point is not to commit suicide over this nonsense. That's not the point. Don't take it out on yourself. The point is to take it out on the people who deserve to be taken out on. But that's never going to happen.
Well,
The traumatized are so scared shitless of the people who abuse them and traumatize them. And that's a fact, Jack.
well, fair enough. But that's all part of the reacting to trauma, isn't it? On a related subject, this recent decision by the congressional Republicans to ban the first openly transgender member of Congress, Sarah McBride. I can't remember her name. Of course, Sarah used to be a he, but now she's a she. And she's not going to be allowed in the Capitol to pee in the women's restroom. They're banning her from the women's facilities in the rotunda or wherever the congressional offices are. Now, I have only two things to say about that. And this applies to my feelings about abortion as well. Let me start with abortion. Nobody but a woman has the right to decide what she's going to do with her body, in consultation with her physician. You know, that seems reasonable. So if you're listening to this and you have a dick, shut the fuck up.
Why can't people say that directly to their face? Why does it take, you know, why is it we got to this point? Because people didn't understand that part of the problem of how we got here was that you had a president who let Mitch McConnell stack the Supreme Court with conservative judges that would allow this kind of thing to take place.
That injury took place before the election. It took place a year in the last year of Obama's presidency when that motherfucking traitor, Mitch McConnell, refused for one solid year to bring Obama's nominee for the Supreme Court into the Senate for a hearing and an up or down vote on whether he should be confirmed.
So that's what I'm saying is like, isn't part of the issue here not just who gets into the executive branch, but it's all the spineless people who have no backbone who allowed that to come into the executive branch. Basically, there's a bunch of, the Republic, probably again, this goes back to what we talked about last time, which is what's the future of the Republican Party? I mean, Trump can't live forever. Is it more of this extremist, politics? Is that what we're headed towards?
Well, I can't get much more extreme than it is right now. So, um, but back to my remark about, you know, people with dicks. The same sort of reasoning for me or feeling applies to transgender people who, through no fault of their own, feel like they were born into the wrong body. That's just a fact. Now, it's even, I feel even more strongly about this than I do abortion because, no, first of all, nobody but that person has a right to say how they feel inside or to be told what they should do about it. So in this case, uh, it's not just one half of the population I'm addressing, it's both halves. If you have, something against the transgender people, then like abortion, if you have a dick, shut the fuck up. But in addition, if you've got a pussy, shut the fuck up too. In other words, just shut the fuck up, no matter who you are. But we're not programmed and we're not used, a lot of us, to standing up and saying those things because we've sort of been conditioned to avoid conflict in our personal relations. It's
And that's
hard.
the part that has to change. That it's not making you a bad person to assert what you think and what you feel. That does not make you bad as a person.
No,
You
it
are
doesn't.
not hurting a person. You are not trying to make them or protecting their motherfucking ass. Because when you protect their motherfucking ass, it's basically self harm on yourself.
Well, you're not wrong, but a lot of us aren't built to be able to stand up and do those kinds of things. So yes, somebody has to do it, and I guess you and I are doing it right now. But you know, people aren't built uh, to go out and seek conflict. Many people aren't.
So,
So it's difficult.
the question I have is, this is what I think is where, there's this like archetype of the hero. Okay, the true hero, the one that realizes that nobody is coming to rescue you. Nobody is coming to rescue you. You have to rescue yourself.
Some of us are unable to do so. People
Well,
without resources.
when you don't do that, this is what you get.
Yeah, but it's not it's you're not at fault. Even if you're unable to stand up and fight for yourself, who's is that someone's fault? Is that a character defect? Is that something we should shame people over, being unable to defend themselves? It's complicated. What you're saying seems right and what we ought to do, but it gets more difficult when you get down into the details, into the weeds.
Yeah, there's a stand-up comedian who says, this is a shame, this thing with climate change, all the things that we did for the climate change. I mean, we didn't use plastic bags at the grocery. Like if we really want to change and affect things, you have to jump right in and start helping the very people who need the help the most. Not rescuing them, but empowering them to teach them.
There are so many things that we're realizing these days that we've done to ourselves that are really bad, and plastics is one of them. Uh, but it's not a problem that is going to be easy to solve. Uh, I go down into Delaware sometimes, off and on. And every now and then I walk into a convenience store down there and I buy a couple, three things. And then like nobody ever asked me down there, you want a plastic bag for that? Because they don't do that down there in Delaware anymore. You got to bring your own bag in or you got to buy one of their reusable bags or just, lump everything up and carry it out in 3 or 4 trips if you bought that many things. But it goes much further than that. The real problem we have today with plastics is food packaging and other types of packaging. And it wouldn't be so bad if we really buckled down and were able to recycle that shit. But unlike recycling of metals and of paper, which work tremendously well, if we paid attention to those two types of recycling, oh man, what a difference that would make. It really would. But plastic is a totally different thing. It turns out you cannot effectively recycle plastic because there's too many different types. There's thousands of different mixtures of plastics that we use in our lives today. And only a handful, only a few of those thousands of types are actually able to be recycled. The rest have to be thrown away, accumulating in landfills, or worse, getting into our water, the oceans. It's a huge problem. So I personally have stopped trying to cut down on my purchase of items that come wrapped in especially hard plastics. Films are not so bad. You throw them away, they get buried. But and I've stopped recycling the plastics that I have to use. I don't put them in my little, transparent recycle bin anymore and haul them out to my blue dumpster thing. I just put them in with the rest of my trash and let the garbage men pick them up and hope that, they'll be better off in the landfill than they are in the ocean. So it's not just a case of, stopping the use of plastic grocery bags. The problem is much, much huger and less and more intractable than that. And that's just one small piece of everything that's going wrong around us.